Okay, so today we're going to make our secondary colors. So I'm going to start with orange. And I'm going to erase the word orange. And this is pretty much like you did the other ones, except this time we're going to be focusing on making our secondary colors. And there's a little bit extra step. So this is how a color wheel works. The colors work to combine together to make the color that's in between. So magenta and yellow make orange. Magenta and blue make violet. Yellow and blue make green. And you always start with whatever is the lightest color. So to make orange, I'm going to start with yellow because yellow is lighter than magenta. Swirl around on my yellow paint. And I would pick up a lot of yellow paint. And I'm going to paint the hue. And this is where things are different. I'm just painting it yellow first, so we don't ever mix on the paint palette. And I'm going to paint the shade. Paint both of those yellow. Okay. Now I'm going to wash my brush off. Dry my brush off. Then I'm going to go into magenta. You don't need a lot of magenta. Then I'm going to start mixing this in. And already I can tell I've used too much magenta. I'm going to wash my brush out, dry my brush off, get more yellow, and mix that yellow in because I want more of like a pumpkin orange. And I'm going to spread this out through the hue and the shade. You have to work fairly quickly or this is going to dry. All right, now while I've still got orange on my brush, I'm going to do a couple of dots onto the orange section, onto the tint. I'm going to go in with white. And I'm going to mix that in. This should make peach. Be sure you stay inside your lines. All right. You can't see it on the screen, but it did make peach. And for the shade, I'm going to wash my brush off, dry it off, and go in with black throughout. I'm probably going to have to go in and add, because it's starting to dry already. So I'm going to have to go in and add some, I'll start with yellow. I'm going to add some yellow, mix this in. And you can see this is a little bit too yellow. So go back, add a little bit of magenta, mix that in. And you're going to keep working between these three colors until you make brown. I added more yellow because I had too much magenta. Okay. So it should make brown. If you haven't made brown yet, mine's a little bit too light. So I'm gonna add a little bit more black. Again, if I'm painting on the table, I'm going to clean that up at the end of class with a paper towel. All right, I've got a nice shade of brown. I'm going to smooth this out, make sure it's nice and even all the way across. And you can rotate your paper however you need to do that. All right. So there, I've got brown. Should be kind of a warm brown. For green, I'm going to start by erasing the word green. And then if you look at your two colors, yellow is lighter than blue. So I'm going to start with yellow. And I'm going to do this one the same way I did orange. So I'm going to paint this entire section yellow first. And make sure you have a lot of paint so that you can, so it doesn't dry up and that you can manipulate it longer. Okay. Now I'm going to wash my brush out, dry my brush off, get some blue. And I'm going to start mixing blue into the yellow. And you'll see it makes, immediately it's going to make green. And spread that green out. If you need more color, you can always go dip back into the paint palette as long as you clean your brush first. Okay, while my brush is still dirty, I'm going to go do some green dots, wash my brush out, dry it off, go into white, and blend this together. Hopefully you will have made enough to cover the whole thing. If you didn't, then you'll have to make your color again. So yellow, blue, mixed with white. And you can see right now mine don't match. Mine's way too blue. So I have to go back in and add more yellow. It's easier if you can just do it right the first time. You don't have to go back and correct it. But if you do have to go back and correct it, it's not the end of the world. Now, what happens if you make it a little bit too dark? You wash your brush off, you dry it off, and while this is still wet, you can pick up some of the color with your dry brush. See, now I was able to get the color I wanted. Light green. It's really hard to see on the screen, but it is light green. All right, I'm going to wash my brush off, dry it off, and I'm going to do the black. It took me too long to do this part, so this is completely dry. So what I'm going to do is I'll start with the black paint. I'm going to do a bit of black paint throughout, wash it off, dry it off, and then I'm going to go back in with yellow. I think I need some more yellow. Do some yellow dots through there. And do a couple of blue dots. And I can mix this up because I don't have a lot of blue on my paintbrush. All right, and you can see it should be turning like an olive green color. Okay, and spread all of that out. Depending on the type of paper you have, it might be difficult to spread it out, but just do the best you can. Oops. Okay, so now I've got light green, medium green, dark green. Wash your brush out and dry your brush off. Our last section is violet. Okay, so just like all the others, I'm erasing the word violet. Red and blue combine to make violet, and neither of them, they're about the same intensity. So I'm not worried about like which one goes first. I'm going to start with magenta. You can start with blue if you like. It really doesn't matter for this one. And I'm painting the tint. I'm sorry, I'm painting the hue and the shade. Now I'm going to wash my brush out, dry it off, go in with blue, and start mixing that together. You can see it immediately makes violet. And work really hard to stay inside your lines. Now all my paint on my brush is starting to dry up too. That's why I'm having a harder time smearing it. Or not smearing it, but spreading it. I'm going to lightly dip my paintbrush in the water. I barely touch the water. And just kind of spread it out. All right, now I'm going to touch the water, dry my brush off a little bit, make some purple dots on here, wash my brush out completely. I'm going to take my paintbrush and swirl in the white paint and paint this section lavender. Lavender is purple and white. All right. Once I've got that section painted lavender and got it as smooth as I can possibly get it, then I'm going to do the shade. All right, so just like the previous ones, I'm going to take my black paint and I'm going to dab it around wherever I want it to be darker. And I think I'm going to have to add more magenta and more blue. So I'm going to add an equal amount of magenta and blue to this. Wash my brush out, dry it off. You notice after each time I do this, I never contaminate my paints. I always wash my brush out and dry it off in between colors. I don't want to ruin my paints. I have to turn this. All right, and then I'm going to follow the edge just like I did on the others. And it's really hard not to make your purple too dark, but try not to make it too dark. You want to be able to see the shade purple without it looking black. You can always add more black, but it's difficult to remove it. All right, so that's my shade of violet. So it'll look like this when you're finished with your secondary colors, and you can do your name however you like. So if you want to paint it, you can paint it. If you want to draw on it, we can draw on it after we paint it. Okay, it's got to dry up first though. All right, take a picture of your work and turn it in.